Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Greg Chapman Show. This is a show mainly meant for facilitators and trainers, educators, conducting workshops virtually or face-to-face on any kind of behavioral topic from leadership to self-awareness to high-performing teams and so on. The idea of this long-form conversation is to help fellow trainers and facilitators learn techniques, change approaches or mindsets, bust many facilitation myths, even tips and tricks find their way in here, and all of this from masters of their craft from across the world. If you're starting out, or if you're new, or if you're old, if you're an old hand at the game, you'll find something in here for you. Today's guest on the show is Karen Pratt. Karen is an internationally certified teaching and supervising transactional analyst, TSTA, in the education specialty. She is certified by the International Board of Certification in affiliation with the International Transactional Analysis Association. She is chairperson of the South African Transactional Analysis Association, SATA for short, and co-chair of the Professional Standards Committee of the International Board of Certification, IBOC. Karen has been involved in TA since the year 2000 and uses it in her professional work as a facilitator, coach, and supervisor, as well as being actively involved in training new trainees, both to the first level of qualification as a certified transactional analyst, CTA, and to the second level as teaching and supervising transactional analysts. Karen holds the PCC coaching credential from the ICF and a supervision diploma from Coaching Development. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, and straight out of the gate, from not being interested in people to keeping people as centerpiece. What's that journey been for you, and why is that relevant, and how does that speak to you?
I think when I left school, I kind of science and biology was very much what I was interested in. I didn't have a lot of insight into me as a human being because I hadn't had any opportunity. So that's what my first career was, in a laboratory doing medical microbiology, and working more with bugs and specimens from people than actual people. The journey from there moved slightly sideways to become interested in holistic healing work, so doing aromatherapy, reflexology, Reiki. Loved that work, and out of that grew my interest in psychology, particularly working with women who were struggling to conceive. There was a lot of emotional, psychological stuff going on, and the few hours of psychology that came into the holistic healing training was certainly not enough. And that's where I met TA. And I think my first fascination was the sense I made of who I was, the meaning I'd made of myself, and how that was only one version and how it could change. I never had an intention to take it to where I am today. It really emerged. This is good stuff. I've done 2 days, let me do the next year. And it just kind of kept on growing, and kind of the rest is history, as they say. And I love the sense of helping people understand themselves better, probably because of the value it offered to me in my journey of going, oh, this is who I am. This is how I tick. This is what works well for me. Here's some meaning I've made that actually doesn't serve me well. I could begin to craft some new meaning. And the joy and depth of ease it still gives me in my journey is what I love to offer to others as well.
In a sense, I'm just imagining this. It's like I'm reflecting inward, and this is what's happening to me, and then I take it to my group. And then when I take it to the group, I also notice people reacting, engaging with that in a certain way. There's learning over there, and then I bring it in. So there's this happy interplay, and also a nice virtuous cycle being set up over there.
And certainly my beliefs about learning is that it's never only unidirectional. So I'm always learning from my trainees. Who I am, I share with them with some knowledge. They talk about it, they ask questions, they make some different meaning, which then challenges me. So I think for me, real learning is always multi-directional. I think of the co-creative TA principles and the principle of we-ness. Right. The teacher has to be impacted by the students and vice versa. So it is that beautiful cycle that you name.
And I want to go into TA and jump into transaction analysis. I also wanted to ask you, you mentioned the meaning I made of myself and for myself has changed. And I just wanted to jump into that. But before I go there, your healing, as you were telling me, so there are many different therapies that you've engaged in, that you've learned, or techniques or schools of thought. And then there was TA. I'm sure that all of that you've learned is still active within you. I'm saying from a healing perspective. Does that also spill into your facilitation and the work that you're doing with groups, or are you keeping it as two separate pieces clearly delineated?
That's such an interesting question. And certainly my Reiki work with energy, I think it's Eric Byrne, who promoted TA, spoke about intuition. That got him really interested in, you can observe things, but then what's that part of us that intuitively picks up what's going on? So certainly my training in energy healing, I think, comes into my facilitation. And I know once way back, someone said to me, you've done so many different things, and even though you don't speak about them, it makes you who you are. So certainly I don't compartmentalize. My experiences across my life, I think, come together in each moment with the people that I'm working with, facilitating, etc. And particularly that felt sense, that intuition, the energetic connection as well, I think really supports me in my facilitation work.
Sure. And it's going to be a little, I don't know if you can recall it or not, but if you can just look back and see that in your facilitation sessions, in your group work that you're doing, if you have an example or an instance of how you've taken something from the healing space and brought that into the facilitation space, how did that pan out? If you can recall.
I think that intuitive reading the energy in a group really helps me. And I'm thinking of a particular group online. I have been working online for about 5 or 6 years now, not only since the pandemic, because the interest in people training with me, it came from many different countries, and it was such almost a no-brainer to just start working more and more virtually. And in a group process, they're the stages of a group, at Tuckman stages that talks about the storming, and maybe that's almost, what do I feel in my body, the intuition of, oh, hang on, there's something going on here. Reading the faces on the screen, picking up almost the energy of actually saying, hang on, what's going on? Shall we stop and talk about that? Which has always been very transformational in the group. I'm thinking of a particular group where on the psychological level, there were assumptions and misunderstandings, and we could have just hoped they would go away, and I could have kept on with the topic I was training on the day, but actually notice my body. And I think that comes from particularly the energy aspect of the healing work I did. How do I notice in my body what's going on and put it out into the group, and the richness that offers for authentic conversation and learning for the group, even more learning than if I was keeping to the topic that was meant to be on the agenda at that point.
Right. And would I be accurate in saying that the healing work that you've done is even before the year 2000 when you started your TA journey, or was it after that?
My holistic healing work was before that.
Oh, okay.
My so that was from 1994, 95-ish onwards. And then the TA began in 2000, and I did them both concurrently for a good few years. Until I realized my interest in energy and time was being taken up more with the psychological facilitation work, and almost like a wedge as that facilitation work grew to be the bigger end of the wedge. My body work, holistic healing, became the smaller end of the wedge until I made the point of I'm choosing to do purely the working with people, facilitation training part of work. I just really was loving it more and more.
Sure. So you've been doing this work for almost 3 decades now, a little short of 3 decades, and work on yourself, work on people. And I'm curious, to whatever extent you're comfortable sharing, of course. I'm curious, the meaning, so the statement you made earlier on, the meaning I made for myself, or the meaning I made of myself, that has changed. So what's that change been like? And I don't know if I should ask the question, and you tell me if the question fits over here about scripts, and your life script, and a little bit around what that is, and then if the two questions align, that would be really nice.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's all, I mean, a good way of talking about it is in the concept of script. What's the story I was telling myself about myself? I'm an only child. I was quite a bright child at school. And I think part of my story was I'm only okay if I get things right. So the style of being perfect put quite a lot of pressure on myself. But somehow never quite believed that I was good enough. Part of it was my circumstances after school. It just didn't ever emerge about the opportunity to do tertiary education in any formal way at a university. My father had run away to fight in the war as a teenager almost. Didn't have a lot of education himself. And I think when I started meeting my TA trainer and peers in my TA group, the second guessing of was I good enough, the need to belong, I always felt a little bit on the edge, being a little bit different from others because I hadn't gone to university. I was quite a lonesome only child. So that sense of I'm finding a way to belong in my own way. I don't have to be, I don't need to be like everyone else just to belong. And really the validation, the appreciation of who I was, what I offered in the group over, well, TA training takes a good few years, just grew and grew, that I could gradually begin to, I guess, believe in myself more, hear feedback from people without any hidden agendas in how they experience me. I think in our families of origin, they're the patterns that we've experienced from when we've been born into the family. And they so unconscious, we just think that that's the norm. But to be in a group of conscious people learning about themselves was such a gift to be able to begin to think differently. And it's an ongoing journey of constantly realizing that I'm making slight adjustments in who I always already am, if I take it to that deeper philosophical, spiritual level. There's been a maybe striving to be good enough in the first half of my life. And I'm very conscious of the journey of letting go and dropping into qualities and ways of being that have in my framework are always already there. And it's a lovely sense of ease that goes with that.
Wow. So I don't know if I've told you. So I too am an only child, and so yeah. So when you say that, connects with a few things happening in my mind. I don't need to be like anyone else. That's a very small sentence, but there's so much within that sentence that you know. I mean, the shift is huge. The sentence is small, but to be able to say,
exactly. Yeah.
I don't need to be like anyone. That's a huge shift, and then so being good enough to letting go. So that's big. I want to jump from here into, so like you've spoken of your journey. It's been a journey, and I'm sure there've been many inflection points to arrive at something. And I'm just trying to capture the essence of what you said in that one little sentence of I don't need to be like anyone else. So to make that shift, to make the shift of being good enough to letting go, I'm sure there've been many inflection points, many ups and downs, and the downs have also contributed to as many epiphanous moments across the journey. I also want to zoom in on one or two of those penny drop moments where you were sitting in a workshop, but as a participant and learning, and a transformation happened. And so if you could tell us about, so when you were on the other side, not facilitating, but as a participant, so what was that? So what was that experience? A little bit about the context. And when I'm saying transformation, I'm saying you learned something that transformed you, something you were doing in life, something that you are doing in life right now, you would not have been doing had it not been for that program. And yeah, I'm maybe niching it down too much. I'm sure there's lots of other stuff from real life coming. I just wanted to explore the facilitative side of it.
I can remember a key moment, probably halfway through the first full year of my TA training. So I did the introductory workshop, and now maybe it wasn't halfway, maybe it was a third of the way in. And I'm quite an introvert, so quiet in the group, quite a big group, gosh, maybe 20 people. I also process quite a lot internally before I say something when I'm a learner. And I noticed I was the quietest one in the group. And then there was a little bit of pressure that I put on myself with, I ought to say something, but I don't really know what to say yet because I'm still thinking. And my TA trainer over tea, so it wasn't a question, a brilliant facilitation question, but over tea, a cup of tea one afternoon in the break, he sidled up to me and he said, "How are you doing?" So I said, "Oh, it's amazing learning." And he said, "You're really quiet. Is that okay? Shall I invite you in, or shall I leave you to come in when it's time for you?" That for me was huge, because someone took the trouble to connect with me.
Wow.
And be curious about what was going to work for me, which was so different from my schooling of you've got to do it one right way. And I was very good at doing it one right way quite well and got very high marks, but it didn't give me a sense of I can do it in my own unique way. And I think that was a very key shift for me. That person took the trouble to ask. So simple.
So simple.
Took all of a minute.
Yeah.
But that gave me the permission. It's okay. I said to him, if I remember correctly, I'll do it when I'm ready. And gosh, once I started finding my feet, it just flowed. But that was really, really a key shift for me. And I'm very aware of being on the other side now. That principle of taking the time to connect with each learner and what do they need, particularly from me or within the learning relationship at any moment, not to assume and decide what's best for somebody else, because that was the big shift. You mean I can say it for myself? And what a permission that was.
This is like my spider sense of looking for patterns going up. All right, so I'm seeing this pattern. You said something really simple, really profound a little while ago about I don't need to be like anyone else, and now something really simple, but I can just feel how profound that is. And this whole business of permission and taking permission, I think it just sits right next to contracting, which is extremely important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Kind of work that we do. And I never thought of it that. So I would just go and pull a person in. That's my facilitation style. And, this whole radars up happening in a class where I'm kind of categorizing people. So the way I would categorize people would be sun, moon, and stars. So sun's like talking the most, and moon a little less, and stars a little less. So so I'm kind of, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I'm plonking people into these buckets. And I would try and divide my time saying, hey, okay, time for the stars. Let's go to them and let's quickly pull them out, yank them out of that space, because it's okay to get uncomfortable. And so I'm actually now re-looking at that part, just talking to you. And guys listening to this is not scripted or made up. I'm really doing this as I'm talking to you, and I'm saying that, hey, that's a simple shift. So keep the awareness going is what I'm taking away. And when you want to pull somebody in, also taking that permission, because you have no idea what's happening for that person. And
Exactly. I think it's quite I'm quite impacted by my my history as a white South African, growing up during the apartheid era, where white people told black people what they needed to do and who they were and how they could think. And that's a very simplistic statement to try and sum up what it is. But almost that sense of what right have I got with anybody to decide what might be good for them. I think it comes with my philosophy of what learning is, based quite a lot on what Paulo Freire's work of people's experience is really, really valuable.
Sorry,
not just
I must interrupt. Paulo, could you please spell that out? P-A-U-L-O?
Paulo Freire, P-A-U-L-O, his first name, and then F-R-E-I-R-E, Freire. He was a Brazilian educator, and very much about education being part of social engagement. People not drifting into a community deciding what's good for them, but actually being on the ground and seeing what people's lived experience is and what they're looking for. So that translates for me very powerfully into facilitation, particularly because of my history as a white South African.
You've spoken of Paulo. I hope I've got the pronunciation right. And you've also spoken about this facilitator that you had when you were attending, and the whole permission bit that we just spoke of. What have there been mentors in your life? Like now, if I just go outside the classroom, have there been mentors, maybe a facilitator, maybe not, in your life journey as a TA practitioner and supervisor and facilitator and coach? And what kind of role have they played? What one or two, three few pieces of advice have they given you that's really stayed with you, or they've elicited out from you that have really stayed? If you could just talk to that a little bit.
I guess there have been people in their professional roles as TA supervisors and trainers, coach mentors, and lots of those roles are, as you said, not giving advice, but really helping me find my growing edge within myself. So it's almost been the quality of the relationship that I see as common in all those the people who've played those professional roles with me. the safety, the psychological safety that I've felt with them, but not a soft, fluffy telling me you're wonderful. The rigor of challenge as well, that has felt a gift because of the absolute safety and psychological trust that I have with them. So it goes back to the contracting. How have they set up our professional roles, and how we're going to be together? Those have been key. And I remember the quality of those interactions more than any facts. Interesting. And then on the other hand, really a supportive husband who's given me space to explore my journey. And then two particularly really, really, really good friends where I can have been absolutely, authentically, honestly myself. One from my early 20s, and we're still in touch, and another friend, we're in similar work. So a friend and colleague, maybe only over the last 20 odd years. But it's actually with the professional people and the friends and family, it's the quality of the relationship, the permission to keep exploring who I am without any insistence on doing something in a way they think is right for me. Even the challenges have been, I've decided, they've flagged up. I can remember one of my supervisors saying, Karen, it's that funny piece again, isn't it? Whatever it is, over the months, you're going on that loop again, isn't it? Now what you want to do about it? Just naming it without any judgment and making me realize, why am I getting hooked into that piece again? And what new sense am I making of that? So very much I've been in the driving seat. Nobody's told me that's right, that's wrong, do more of this and less of that in such a stark way.
That is so fortunate.
I think I am fortunate.
Yes, absolutely. Touch wood. Most, and why I say that is because the clients that I'm normally business to business. So that's my clients typically in organizations. And I think all of them are in organizations. Yeah, 99% of them. And over there, it's lots and lots of all tell, and very less ask. Even if it's an ask, it's really a tell disguised as an ask. So,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, and yeah, so are you in touch with your mentors now?
Certainly. I mean, my TA trainer who introduced me to TA, we're now colleagues in a professional company offering coach training, coach supervision training. So we bounce ideas off each other and we train, co-facilitate together. Some of my other TA key supervisors, I still have supervision with them. My friend who also co-facilitates with me over the years, we're in touch as friends, and we're just starting to pick up some possible training together again. So I certainly very intentionally stay connected with mentors and supervisors from way back. Our roles have shifted somewhat, but so I'm still in my own supervision, my own reflection. I have a person with whom I share my inner philosophical, spiritual life with as a kind of bounce off partner as well in a group that thinks and meditates together. So those are all my own ongoing, how do I stay clear and in the moment more and more as I work? Because I think my temptation, I guess all of our temptations, is to be hooked into our heads and we start analyzing and losing contact, losing connection with the people we're facilitating. And it's more about ourselves. I know I go into, am I doing it right? Is it good enough? and then I lose the moment of connection
Mm.
where something beautiful might be emerging for that person,
Right.
because I'm more concerned about me than the relationship and their learning needs.
And that's always a tightrope, being
Mm,
concerned. And I'm also looking at,
mm,
whether it's a professional relationship, like a coaching or even in a training,
mhm,
especially training. There's an agenda that I have to complete.
mm,
There's the other person's needs. How do you reconcile the two?
mm,
Um,
mm,
yeah, and I'm the reason I asked you why, if you're in touch with your mentors, is that there are a few patterns that I'm beginning to notice. Andrew, I had him on the show, and Kirsty too. I had
mhm,
her on the show as well, and of course, they spoke extremely highly of you. And I know you as a facilitator. I've been trained by you, and gosh,
mm,
your wisdom is right up there. Um, and so a few patterns begin to emerge. One of them is that a lot of practitioners in this space, a lot of good facilitators in this space, the TA space, the healing space, the coaching space, that kind of stuff, um, have cultivated, like to use a Sanskrit word, to use an Indian word, a sangha, a
mm,
collective,
mm,
and reach out and
mm,
give back to the collective, but also take from that collective. And
mm,
it's not
mm,
just me going out, reading my books, getting trained, coming back, delivering, but I also see a lot of
mm.
successful facilitators being a part of a collective. They may not have labeled it as such, but
Sure.
you've got your mentors, for example, you've got your
Mm,
close family members, you've got your friends, and
mm,
you've got your groups and your meditation groups, and you're reaching
mm,
again back and forth, taking and giving from this collective, and
mm,
that's
mm.
also nurturing your journey. Want to move ahead and go a little bit
Yeah.
now into TA and say
Mhm.
that transactional analysis, I know it's a journey. It takes a long time to get into, learn, and just by reading a few books and attending a training program, it doesn't, for a lot of people, it doesn't give you a good grounding in what it is. And I think it's really important to struggle with the methodology, with the models, and not just learning them, but first learning them, yes, and then applying them on yourself, and then taking it to the group, and then just continuing that iterative cycle. Um, in all of that, I'm just wondering, what model, construct, principle from transaction analysis has helped you as a facilitator facilitate better,
Mm,
take it to the next level, dial it up, and how?
mm. So if I pick up first on the point you made that I think is so important when people are learning TA, sometimes you get someone who says, oh, this is how I can use it with my group.
Mhm.
And it's always that almost reining in saying, what sense are you making it for you? So you're absolutely spot on. If I haven't integrated it for me in my life in all its aspects, it's almost abusive to then do TA or use it in a group. I think the model, if that makes the most, has made the most impact in how I facilitate, is my awareness of my styles of communication,
Mhm.
in terms of the parent, adult, child, ego states in the external version of it, the what I've created, the okay communication model, and how that external, what do I do in my facilitation? What's my style of interaction? What's going on internally? Is it clean and clear? Or is it getting into psychological manipulation? And that's where, when I superimpose the drama triangle, it's a beautiful barometer for me. Hang on, what's going on in the dynamics between me and the group? Is there an invitation for me to get onto the drama triangle because somebody else has gone there? And then what do I do instead to invite, well, to stay myself present, and into using the qualities in the winner's circle. I like to make it into a circle now.
If you
That
could
for
just,
me is a shorthand
if I
of,
may interrupt, sorry, if you could just tell us a little bit about what is the Drama's triangle briefly, and then how do you use it, that would be really nice.
So would it be useful to flip up a diagram at this point?
A diagram, certainly, certainly. That's a good visual.
So this is a model of parent, adult, child ego states. It's ways of communicating that can't, if we're in the okay box, all these aspects as a facilitator, there's a time to be structuring, nurturing, considerate, collaborating, spontaneous, creative. And these are done with present-centered adult awareness. Right now, I'm responding to what's going on with the people in my group. If I lose touch of present reality, I'm going to be facilitating with the negative is a somebody's not okay here, a rather overbearing, judgmental attitude, or a I'm thinking for the people, a marshmallowing attitude, or it's all about me, I'm very egocentric, or I get very anxious or rebellious. And those ways out of the box are more about reacting. If I'm build this up, when I superimpose a drama triangle, the drama triangle says we play roles in a psychological game. We either are a rescuer, so we try to get our needs met by being too kind. So as when I'm facilitating, I get into marshmallowing mode. I think for the students, I just tell them what they need to do because I want to help them learn. And that presupposes that I'm seeing my students in that victim mode at the bottom of the triangle. I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I need somebody else to think for me and help me out here. Or sometimes, and there's a third role in the drama triangle, which is the top left in the persecutor role, which is I'm just going to tell you what's good for you. This takes it into the dominating mode. And it keeps somebody feeling disempowered as the victim mode. And you'll notice on the diagram, which is, the diagrams are really a metaphor, those go into the space of disrespect. Somebody's not okay. And they're really more about our past story in our family of origin than really potent present-centered work. But if I bring in the winner's circle, it's saying the respectful aspect of the three drama triangle roles brings it back into the okay box. So my desire to help is to be responsive to the learner's needs, but without doing it for them and rescuing them. If I, as a facilitator, feel disempowered in the victim and I'm being hard done by maybe the students challenging me, I can jump up into the box, the okay box, and find my voice, name what's going on, be honest and authentic. If I feel a tendency to be very critical in that top left corner as persecutor, the respectful way is to claim my power as a facilitator and be firm and structuring. So the green circle is present-centered awareness. It's negotiating what's right for now. I like to describe it as a dance around the box, but one foot is in the adult. The adult in TA is present-centered awareness. What's going on within me, between the group, being totally aware of that, and then making a choice to respond rather than flipping out of the box. And then I'm reacting as if I'm still a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 10-year-old, because that's where those early patterns began.
If you could please share that once again. And I'll just quickly summarize my understanding of it. And if you could just go back to the first slide. Yeah. Yeah,
this.
this one. Right. So what I see are three. So I'm just saying if somebody is not into TA too much, I just heard a little bit about it. So the first circle is your parent, your ego state of the parent, and this everybody has this. I'm just going very layman right now. The second one is your adult, and the third one is your child. And even in the parent even can be divided into two parts: the dominating parent or the nurturing parent. That's typically how TA defines that. And the child, and please correct me, Karen, if I've got this wrong. The child can be divided into two parts: the positive and the negative. The free child and the, what's the other piece? I'm
So
forgetting.
in the early days, it was called the adapted child and the natural child.
Yes.
Yeah, indeed.
So, and in your diagram, what you're saying is each one of these, even if I divide them, even if I divide the child into two, each one of these states still has a positive. So
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the parent who is dominating, the positive aspect of it could be that parent is coming from a place of wanting to add structure to it.
Absolutely.
To the situation.
Absolutely.
And if you're looking at the free child, and a lot of times you say free child, that's negative, immature, and you need to move away from that. And by this model, what I'm also seeing is that even the free child has a positive, which is spontaneity, and that can be tapped into. So that's incredibly, it reminds me of, I don't know, for some reason, this reminds me of appreciative inquiry, of how, what's there, and we're looking at it with an appreciative lens. Even something which says, for a lot of people saying, hey, that's not right, and you want to move out of there, even there you're saying, hey, hold on a second, there is some positive to that.
Absolutely. And I mean, that spontaneous child, I think that's the part of all of us where we most alive, where change and learning happens. It's because that holds our creativity, our curiosity, almost our energy to thrive and grow lives in that spontaneous child part of us. But we use it in the present in our adults. So the box also describes almost how we pull all these beautiful qualities that are useful from our parent and child parts of ourselves into the service in the moment, at whatever our age is. Little kids at 6 years have a parent adult child, and an 80, 90-year-old has a parent adult child part of their personality.
Right. After let's say 6 years, it's agnostic of age. Everybody has this, irrespective of your age.
It's nothing about age. It's about a way of how we organize our lived experience, metaphorically.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you could just go to the next slide, I just very quickly. So in the drama triangle, just the second one, just if you could go back one slide back. Yeah, that's the one. So the drama triangle is saying that we adopt these negative. I'm saying the drama triangle, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Originally, the way the drama triangle works is they're saying there are these negative stances in life that we take. We're either the rescuer or the victim or the persecutor, and you've mapped the drama triangle to your model of TA. So the rescuers, sitting at the parent, and also marshmallowing, and the victim is, with the child. But then what you're also doing, if you just go to the third slide, please, you're saying that, so the winner's circle is taking the same drama triangle and looking at it from a positive lens, saying, okay, number one, there's a positive to it. Great, that's number one. Number two, let's get a little more mindful of the state that I am in. So perhaps I'm in the rescuer state, and that's may not be too good. Okay, now even that state has a possibility of positive that I could move to, even in that state.
Absolutely. And I think the original theorist, Steve Karpman, when he talked about the drama triangle, he said there's 10% positive intention behind each role.
Right.
But to stay safe when we were growing up, almost, these aren't his words, but my sense, we were too scared to be honest about what was going on. And the way we stayed safe and got our needs met was to do it in a manipulative way.
Right.
And that's what the drama triangle is. We're trying to manipulate others to get our needs met. But absolutely, take that 10% and bring it into awareness. And certainly the circle for me indicates we flow. The drama triangle still seems to be stuck in a corner. And originally the winners was a triangle as well. But my sense of a circle is to flow as to what's appropriate in each moment of our facilitation. So we've got all of this as a facilitator. Each of our students has got all these ways of being, and how do we mix and match? How do we notice what invitation is coming our way from a student? How do we choose to respond, or do we just get hooked into reacting?
Right. And where could somebody find your model?
It's an article in the Transactional Analysis Journal. I can send you the reference. It was written up, I think it was in around 2014, from work that a colleague and I did with community healthcare workers in South Africa. So it speaks quite a lot about that work. And that was the first place where I published the box around the ego states. It was Susanna Temple had done a lot of work before that on separating the parent and the child into the positive and negative modes. The box piece was what helped me make sense of it for the community that I was working with. So it's in the TA journal.
Right. And once you give me the link, I'll just put it in the description of this video so somebody can find it there for further reading.
At that point, I hadn't linked the drama triangle and the winner's circle. That has emerged as I've been training it over the years. Of course, they can go together so beautifully like this. So this might be another short article somewhere.
Another short article
in the future.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. How do you use this so in facilitating, and if you were to teach a facilitator to use this without really, so you've taught a facilitator back end, okay, this is the okay model, this is the parent adult child, this is the drama triangle, this is the winner's circle. Now the facilitator knows that, but when a facilitator goes to a group and is teaching them on something, let's say leadership or self-awareness or something, but not necessarily teaching this model. So how could a facilitator use this for herself or himself and for the group?
So I think the next piece to add in is that how do we know which ego state somebody's in? And it's really through the words somebody uses, the tone of voice, the language. So it's, what is your language inviting? So if I'm saying to somebody, what have you learned? What did you find out there, in quite an aggressive way, rather than, I'm really interested to hear what you did with that. Already there's that subtlety between, is it a critical parent voice, or is it an inviting adult with a bit of natural child voice, in the language I use, in the tone of the voice, in what my face looks like? Because a critical parent will immediately put someone into a anxious, oh, I've done it wrong, child space, or a pushback rebellion. And that's not good for learning. So to invite people to stay in the box, it's the subtlety of language. What have you learned? What's new for you is even different from, did you learn anything new? Can you see the subtle expectation that language creates? And noticing what language is coming my way as a facilitator, how I feel gives me a clue as to what ego state the student might be in. If they're in one of the unhelpful parent or child modes, they're trying to be protecting themselves, or they're trying to push back, or they're trying to catch me out. That's more about, well, where was I then to invite them to go into one of those negative modes? Because a negative invites a negative, a positive invites the positive. So awareness of where do I go internally when a student asks me something is a clue to what's going on. And then being really clear about the words I'm using in response and the intention. Am I really coming from an I'm okay, you're okay, I believe in your possibility, you are creative, resourceful, and whole? Or is there a subtle unconscious, oh, the student's just useless, they're never going to get it? That intention, that subtle intention will also leak out. So it's really aware of what's the intention I'm holding. Do I see people with their infinite possibilities, or am I judging that this is the bright guy and that one's just never going to get it, if I say it very kind of
So the two parts to
like
this,
that.
if I were to be too much of a reductionist, the two parts to this. Part number one is with self, right? So there's a lot of practice that I see that needs to go in to quickly be able to ascertain, where is this coming from? And also then in the moment, letting it go and saying, okay, let me refresh. Is it really coming from here? And let me see. And that can only happen once you've practiced enough, know the model well. And when I say practice, I'm saying, even in real life, you hear somebody say something, quickly connect it to one of those boxes and say, is it coming from a critical parent? Where is it coming from? What kind of a child is it coming from? So once we've got that practice, then we come to the class, to the workshop, and we're now becoming aware that, okay, somebody said this, it's probably over here. Somebody said that, it's probably over here. And this is what it's causing, is that pressing some of my buttons? This is what the state it's getting me to be in. So that's all of this I'm saying is I'm bunching into one part. Now that you've figured out, or at least you have an idea or an opening to where the other person is coming from, and you have an idea of where you're standing. So what next? How do you invite another person to go into another domain or not, or just observe and reflect? What's the next step?
Yeah, that's really good questions. I think that word invite is really key. So we can only be responsible for where we are in our internal process and how we are showing up in our communication.
Right.
But so using that framework, I can be responsible for staying in the box. But if somebody else is outside the box, I can't drag them in kicking and screaming. I can but invite. But then it's up to the person to choose. And I also hold in mind what's going to invite the best learning to emerge in this moment for the contract that we've got. So it's holding in mind what's my job here as a facilitator. Sometimes learning needs to be provocative, and we've got to rattle somebody's cage because they're so stuck in their way of this one right way. But that's different. I think the style of communication is almost a personal. I'm seeing you as another human being, you seeing me as another human being. It's a quality of beingness that we want to be respectful of. But when it's a quality, not a quality, maybe a way of thinking that seems to not be serving the person well, to really challenge them. I'm thinking of what we do as a coach, those challenging, powerful questions. Is this still useful for you? Is a really, really challenging question. But it also comes from within the box, not a, oh my goodness, is this still useful for you? Because that's a judgment. There's no judgment, but there's challenge. So it's not to say facilitation is all soft and fluffy. There's challenge in service of what the learning outcome is mutually agreed to be, if that makes sense.
It does completely. In fact, it actually connects the dots, because when you spoke of your mentors and the interaction with them, one of the first things you said was psychological safety, right? And I'm connecting that to what you're saying right now, in as much as you're coming at it from a place of respect, for yourself and for the other person. You also mentioned the word challenge. You said the rigor of challenging. So there is the need to challenge somebody. I wanted to use a stronger word and say confront. Do you ever see it morphing into confront? Is there a difference? Too many questions in there, but yeah. So challenge, and you gave me a really nice coaching question, saying that, is this still useful for you? And I want to ask you a lazy question, saying, what are some good, powerful questions that you use a lot of, or have come to your, I don't want to say rescue, but you've used them a lot, and they've proven powerful for you?
I think the most powerful questions are what emerge from what the person has just said. And I'm thinking we've seemed to have sort of honed in a little bit to coaching now. But the gist of it is, I'm hearing a script belief. People like me can never do that. For example, that's a generalization. And I would say never, and just leave it hanging. Or because that's like, oh, wow. Now, is this true? Is it never? Oh, well, maybe sometimes. And then that opens up somebody's thinking. Or what about this piece is useful for you? Which piece might you gently let go of? Because I think when we're working with people making new meaning of who they are, we've got to work quite respectfully, because it's almost like their security blanket. They've created it even before they had language, when they were really little kids, to stay safe enough. So we can't say, all wrong, pull out the rug from under their feet. It's served you well. It's kept you safe. You are who you are, and where you are today, that was all part of weaving this rug. But now you're realizing some bits are beautiful, other bits are just getting in your way. So which bits can you gently unpick and then reweave something new into the fabric? So I think there's always that gentle honoring. It wasn't bad, it wasn't wrong, it was the best sense the person made of who they were at that time. But it's like, it's time for a new operating system. Your system keeps on getting into a loop and bombing out. So what can you do about it? Get a new operating system, or a piece of a new operating system.
I've been a facilitator for most of my life and a coach for a very little part of my professional life. So I'm a little more biased towards facilitation. And so I'm going to say that even in facilitation, you've got these small little coachings happening. And I can see, all of a sudden the lens is quickly narrowed on somebody for, let's say, 2 minutes. And you're having this dialogue. And in those 2 minutes, if the question is powerful enough, you're seeing a lot of change happening. And thank you for sharing that. People like me can never be. That's what I'm hearing, and leaving it at that, or just highlighting the never. As an undertone, I'm hearing script language over there and dealing with scripts.
Exactly.
And what I want to ask
you, discounting.
Yeah, and discounting.
Minimizing who I am, what the options are.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm listening for a lot in.
Right.
In any type of learning, whether it's coaching or facilitation, particularly facilitation that includes a self-awareness piece, not just a technical competency that somebody's learning, because there's facilitation for so many different purposes.
Right.
Some is more competency-based, and there's assessment, but other is more transformational, and sometimes there's a bit of both.
Right. That's some good thought to chew on. From a script perspective, what's a book that you could suggest, let's just say, a non-TA person to read up? Because there's certain books that are building on past TA speak. But is there a good book that you could suggest somebody to read up?
Gosh, I mean, one of the books that was quite impactful for me was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I mean, it didn't talk about TA at all, but that sense of the resilience of the human spirit, of what sense he made of him in the concentration camp.
And
that's one that comes to mind. And what's possible, exactly.
From a script perspective, even if it's a little more technical, mini scripts or scripts, but
I mean, there's so many TA textbooks that give you the nuts and bolts of script. I mean, a more recent, really useful TA textbook is called Into TA. It's been edited by 4 of my TA colleagues from different fields. Newton, Tennyson, de Graaf, and Cornell. And they really give a succinct, this is how TA started with Byrne, this is the essence of the framework, and here's some developments and even non-TA thinking that links with each of the TA models. That is really a very useful book. I've recently written a book where I've linked transactional analysis as a coaching approach. It's just called that, transactional analysis coaching. And I think I try and get to the essence of all the TA frameworks that are useful for developmental work. It's 1,000 words per chapter. So I've sort of cut all the waffle. It's
short
really
chapters. Lovely.
Short chapters, getting to the heart of
TA coaching,
transactional
analysis coaching.
Transactional analysis coaching, published by Routledge. In
And
one of they've got a series on coaching.
Is this available on Amazon?
It's available on Amazon. It's available from Routledge as I think on Kindle or a hard copy as well.
In fact, that's what I was going to ask you. A book that gives you tools and tackles of how to, so this is a nice one.
It's got coaching as its framework, but as you've said already, coaching and facilitation really overlap quite a bit, because at the heart of it, it's about learning and change, and how do you facilitate that? So even if people aren't fully fledged 100% of their time working as a coach, coaching thinking and approaches, people find beautiful to add into their facilitation or their consultancy even. Anything working, any contract working with people developmentally.
I'm going to buy this book.
Can be useful.
Certainly. I'm going to buy this book. I'm sure it's going to help. And like you said, they're short chapters, it distills.
It distills. Yeah.
Interesting. So as we draw to a close, I'm just struck by this question. It's been so many years for you. Do you still get stuck? do you still run into a stone wall? Do you sometimes, I don't know how to make the change happen, or I don't know if that session went too well. Does that still happen to you, or is that just for us guys?
No, it absolutely still happens. And that's why I'm still in my own supervision. And I meet with peer groups. I've got 2 different peer groups in the TA world. We meet, one group meets once a month for 2 hours. The other meets more internationally for half a day, 3 times a year. And I still have my blind spots. I still have moments where I'm triggered, but that ongoing, who am I in the work I do, that I find in supervision is so, so important. And such exciting learning when I can understand that little bit more about myself.
For sure.
So yeah, I would feel quite sad if I got to the point where I never felt challenged or stuck, because it feels like then it's ended. And I see this as an ongoing journey of beautiful emergent self-discovery about me and the people I work with. And it's cycles back, as we said right near the beginning. It's that flow. I learn about myself all the time when I'm with a new group. And particularly now I'm working with many different cultures and nationalities in a group because of the growth of virtual work, and just seeing the interaction between people from so many different backgrounds is a real gift for my ongoing learning.
Very quickly, I don't want to let this go. And to whatever extent you're comfortable sharing, where I'm having a tough time imagining this, so I'm just going to ask you, where do you get stuck? I mean, how do you get stuck? You know so many routes and so many questions to ask, and how to reflect and stuff like that. So how do you still get stuck? If you just share an example, maybe, or something.
I think where I still sometimes get stuck, and I'm noticing it's not as much, I get triggered by that really early belief of I'm not good enough because I don't have a university degree. All my learning has been more experiential. I mean, I think sometimes when people hear the rigor of the TA training just at the first level, never mind the second level, they go, oh, wow, it's even more rigorous than my master's degree. But my inner chatter still says, who do you think you are? You're an imposter. How can you work with people with PhDs in coaching and you've got a transactional analysis piece of paper? So that's where I get stuck. I second guess myself. I feel overawed by people with a string of degrees. And each time I go, take it to my supervisor or do my own journaling or reflection and realize there are various routes that people choose, and mine was different, and it's okay. Who I am, what I've learned adds value. People choose to work with me. I don't ever impose myself to work with people. So, hey, what are they seeing in me? There's something of value, and difference is often more useful than the same. Otherwise, there's collusion. So me coming from left of center in my journey is maybe adds a freshness to people who've done it in a different way, and vice versa.
That's a nice takeaway.
But that's the area where I sometimes still get stuck.
Sure. I thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing so openly and honestly and putting yourself out there, and really appreciate that. And what I'm also hearing over there is, telling yourself a little, sometimes just telling yourself a line changes a lot on the outside, the little line inside, the little chatter, like you said. And a little line that I'm taking away from this is sometimes a difference can bring the value.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a nice little line I'm taking away. As we draw to a close, Karen, what's one or two messages that you would like to leave our viewers with, fellow facilitators, sometimes even coaches with?
I think at the heart of it, it's the power of ongoing reflective practice for ourselves as facilitators. And often it's almost less is more. There's a temptation to do another webinar and read another book and get more techniques and models to teach. And I think those are valuable, but almost it's who am I? Who am I? Who am I in my work? That for me has felt really, really key. And maybe we try and shortchange that by getting more and more stuff on the outside. I think it's got to be balanced by deepening into who are we in our work. That's been the biggest gift for me in my journey over these 20-something years.
I might just call this episode the simple and profound way of facilitating. So, because that's been something that's keeping on coming to the foreground over and over and over again, right from the word start, and now we're ending with that. Karen, thank you so much for making time, for being so open and being so educative. You've really educated me, and I'm sure our viewers too out there. So in a very humble way, and that really touches my heart. Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you, Greg, for the opportunity. I've enjoyed sharing what's very dear to my heart. So it's been a lovely way to spend an hour or so. Thank you very much for inviting me to the show.
Thank you.